Hello, I'm Derek Wheatley, and welcome to episode 46 of the Weekly podcast. You may be hearing new music there today. It's actually Calvin Doyle, who was on episode 6. He's coming up actually on Wednesday evening for our live segment. But I gave him the chord sequence for the song that I do for the intro, and I had heard Calvin was doing some really good synth kind of music and beats and things. So I asked him to do a little bit of a remix on it, and he's provided for us. So thank you very much to Calvin for that. Thanks to everyone else for all their support during the week and for listening to Kieran's episode. It was funny. Kieran sent me a message a couple of days after, and he had another appearance on a podcast up in Dublin, and it was called First Exchange. I just had to look at it, and it was really good. It was really fun, and he was actually in the studio, and he was standing up for the whole interview, and they thought it was hilarious because he was so full of energy. So go and listen to that if you can. I think it's episode 56 of the First Exchange. Yeah, like I said, thank you for all your support and all your likes and your shares, things like that. Just still doing the Sunday live, doing the live and joyful thing on Instagram. We did one last night, or sorry, I say last night, but it's actually Monday now, so it was Sunday night. And it was with Tina Kiernan, and we chatted about why people get joy from getting their hair done. And it was a good chat. And I have a big background in hairdressing because of my dad, and it was really interesting to talk. But anyway, I think I've covered all bases there. So my guest today is a senior clinician in Jigsaw, and her name is Nicola Glynn. How are you, Nicola?
I'm good, Derek. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. I'm full of the joys of winter, if that's not a saying, but you know what I mean. It's a nice day out, I suppose. Maybe that's what it is.
'Tis a fine day, all right.
Yeah. So listen, we'll get into it. So give us a short history of your upbringing, please, Nicola.
So I suppose I was thinking about this, and I couldn't help but think like there's it's very underwhelming. I mean, I suppose I 4 siblings, grew up in the country, like country, and I suppose where we were, it was very much a case of like if you didn't get along, you had no one to talk to. So because of that, then we were a really close family. We're very close siblings as well. There's only 2 years between all of us, and it goes boy, girl, boy, girl. Right. So we're like extremely organized parents. So yeah, it was just kind of, I think like every country upbringing with a heap of siblings, you just had the crack and went to school and came back and just, I honestly was trying to think about it. I was like, was there anything sort of out of the norm? But I really don't think there was.
Well, look, this is a funny thing about it because, and I said this before, and some people will talk about it for 30 seconds, and then some people will talk about it for 5 minutes. And I guess the thing is, like, maybe the shorter it is, the more kind of nicer of a childhood it was. Does that make any sense?
It does, yeah. I think that's a really nice way of looking at it too, as well.
Yeah.
That, if you don't have a whole pile to say about it, surely there was, as I'm saying, there was nothing eventful about it, but not in a bad way.
Yeah.
It was just a normal, calm, loving, lovely upbringing.
That's you can't ask for more than that. And so when you say country, are you from Westmeath?
No, I'm from Galway.
Okay.
So like I would always say that like I'm from my closest town, but I'm actually from like a village outside the town because nobody knows the village, but everybody knows the town. So I always just say, I'm from there. And then it saves me having to explain all the rest of it.
Yeah, exactly.
As I'm doing right now.
As you're doing right now, yeah. That's understandable. So when did you first become aware of mental health?
This is the other one. When we were chatting before and you were just giving me a heads up, I kind of had a giggle to myself because I was like, do you know what the ironic thing is? I think I became more aware of mental illness before I became aware of mental health.
Yeah.
So my mom trained as a psychiatric nurse. And when we were growing up, I have these really vivid memories of like every Sunday morning, like the 4 of us would go down to mom and dad's room and we'd all we'd play charades and we'd play games, and like it was sort of like we'd interrupt their lying, but we'd all be in the room together. But like mom, every now and then, because we'd do something, we'd say something, she'd be like, I remember there was this patient on the ward, and she'd always talk about like the clients that she looked after and the characters that they were and some of the, I suppose, what you consider odd things that they would have done. But I always remember just listening in fascination and just thinking, God, that's brilliant. I love that someone did that, and I love that somebody was a bit odd like I was. And you know, because like growing up, I was a bit of a daydreamer. I probably
Mm.
still am in some regards. And like when mom would be talking about these people, I'd be like, "Oh, there's a place where we all hang out." I was like, you know, this is great. I was like, I want to get in on that. So, yeah. So I suppose the concept, like I say, of kind of mental illness, but it was never referred to as that, and mom never spoke about it in a negative way or in an unknowing way. I suppose because she trained in it too as well. But like even when you'd be walking down the street or anything, and you know, you'd see people chatting away to themselves, or you know, they might have a bit of an odd behaviour or that. But like, mom never passed a blind bit of heed on it, and if you had any questions, she would always just sort of play it down and just be like, "But sure, that's just the way they are. There's nothing wrong with it. That's just something they do."
Yeah.
So growing up, I was never worried about it. I was never afraid of it. I never considered it to be anything out of the norm. I just figured that they were just other people. They just did, you know, I say they all the time, but I mean, I suppose I'm talking about more like institutionalized,
Yeah.
because where I grew up, there was the state hospital that was there for years. And obviously, if we haven't gleaned already, I'm from Ballinasloe. So like Bridget's there. So you would see a lot of people around the town a lot of the time. And, you know, because they were of that generation too as well, they would have had quite chronic mental illness.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, for me, kind of growing up, like mental illness was a thing, and there was like I never thought anything about it, and it was only kind of when I started working in Jigsaw the concept of mental health
Yeah.
came into play, and I was like, oh, I was like, oh, there's a few different versions out there as well, and I suppose once it all got explained, I was like, oh, that makes sense now. Why didn't I ever think of that before? So for me, it
Yeah.
kind of went the other way around.
Yeah. I do think that people aren't quite I suppose knowledgeable when it comes to the differences between the two, you know, the mental health and the mental illness, because there is obviously a large difference between the two, and I'm sure we'll get into that in a bit. And so, is it because of your mom then that you got into, you know, the idea of becoming a mental health nurse?
Well, that's another thing I was thinking of. I was doing a lot of thinking over the weekend, you might have gathered. So I was going on a walk and I was thinking, I was like, how on earth did I stumble into mental health nursing? I was like, Jesus, I can't remember how it was taught. So I had to go back in time. And I actually originally wanted to be a fashion photographer. So
Oh,
like my mom is also a dressmaker. So like fashion and style, all that was very much a big part of us growing up too as well. So I was always into it. And I really loved photography. So I remember mom asking me, I think I was in fifth year, and she was like, right, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be a fashion photographer. She's like, all right. And her face just fell. And 2 days later, I was booked in with a career guidance person over in Lochray. So I was like, I don't know if my choice has really gone down well.
yeah.
So went over. I think that lady's still in Lochray. She was lovely. Kind of somebody who, even for adults and stuff like that, she kind of helps guide you and gives you information on different careers and careers paths. So went over to her, had a really long chat anyway, and I think thinking back now and knowing what I know, it's probably like personality tests and stuff like that she did, and asked me like what were my strengths, what did I enjoy, all that kind of stuff. And by the end of it anyway, she kind of come up with the umbrella of like allied health professionals, and I knew nothing about this. So I was like, all right, okay. I was like, so what's this now? She's like, so there's like occupational therapy, there's speech and language therapy, there's nursing, there's all these different kinds of things. And I was like, well, I don't know what an OT does. So like, what's that? So she explained what they did, and I was like, that's it. I was like, I want to be an OT. I was like, I'll have a bit of that. So went home, got out the NUIG prospectus, saw OT, saw the points, and went, oh no, 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 that's not happening at all. It's like, oh no. It's like, you know, I'm clever, I'm not that clever. So I mean, like back then I think the points were up in like the 560s, 570s, like
Oh,
they were
wow.
oh cat.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, I was like, that's definitely not
Yeah.
happening. So I was like, okay. I was like, sure, let's look at nursing then. So I looked at general nursing. I was like, well, that's definitely not happening either, points wise. And then I looked at midwifery, and I was like, oh, I actually really, really wanted to go to midwifery or pediatric nursing. No go either, because the points were astronomical. And I think at the time it was because Galway had just started the midwifery course, and they had just created like a 4 year degree course that like once you were done, you were done. Whereas before it would have been that you go do general nursing for 4 years and then you do an add-on to do
Okay.
midwifery or peds. But now they had just kind of created a specialty for midwifery, and yeah, the points were like up in the 5 somethings again. So I was like, hey, no. So then I looked at psychiatric nursing. I was like, oh, I think I can get that. So
Yeah.
I was like, cool. I was like, sure, look, we'll look at psych nursing. And I looked at all the syllabus and the modules and everything that was involved in the course. And I was like, actually, this is something that I think I'll be really, really interested in. Because obviously there was like the biology side of it, and I was really interested in that. And then obviously kind of all the psychology side of it that I didn't realize I was so interested in until I started it. So I went into my career guidance teacher in school and sat down with her. And I don't know if any of your listeners went to the same school as me, but her name was Mrs. Dolan, and she was a unique teacher. And sat down opposite her, and she was just like, right, Nicholas, what do you want to do now when you leave school? I was like, I think I want to do psychiatric nursing. And she put out her hand. She was like, oh my God, Nicola, I think that's a perfect job for you. I remember thinking, I don't know if her career guidance is supposed to be that biased about something. So I was like, okay. And she goes, if I had a loved one and I had to bring them into Bridget's and you were the one looking after them, I'd be so happy about that.
Ah, that's nice.
I was like, all right, that'll do. So I was
Yeah.
like, that was sort of the finish of it then. I was like, right, stick down psych nursing. And so went through with it and started it and absolutely loved it. So I was delighted with my choice. I really was, like, in the end.
You because I was reading up on I found the information on Instagram, but you worked for over 10 years as a is that right?
Yeah.
And you worked in loads of different kind of areas. Could you tell us some of those, and I suppose kind of the differences in those for you?
Okay, well, I suppose like I would always consider my placements as my experience too as well. So I kind of varied anything from adolescent, like I actually nearly went right through the whole time span, I suppose, if I think about it, because like I would have done adolescence, so I would have done placement in Taylor's Hill, but I also worked with adolescents in Scotland and now in my job now. And then I suppose I go all the way down to like the geriatric side, which, like, forgive any older, more mature listeners, would it be 65 plus in that realm is considered geriatric. Obviously not everybody over 65 is geriatric. So, and kind of everything in between. I would have gone from primary care, secondary care, community. Yeah, I would have done a few specialist areas then as well. I suppose when I worked in Aberdeen, I worked in the state hospital there as well. I love a good state hospital. And so like within that hospital, there was like all different units then as well. They would have had a forensic unit, an eating disorders, geriatric, acute, geriatric, long stay. Young adult, acute, long stay, kind of, there was everything basically in the one building, which was good in one sense, but then of course, like, that's a lot of people in one area then too as well. So I suppose for me, obviously the age differences would have been the most contrasting difference in working in those areas, and I suppose presenting issues within those age groups too as well would be quite different. And then between primary and secondary, so I suppose primary, you're working in the kind of the hospitals, the medical model, very much sort of diagnoses and care plans and everything like that. And then secondary would be where I am now, and it's more kind of that early intervention, prevention. You're kind of trying to get in there before it becomes a bigger issue then as well. So I suppose more than timelines, I've actually worked kind of through all the different spectrums then as well, going from like acute to community to early intervention then as well. So I've done, now that I break it down, it's been quite a lot.
It's just because I saw you obviously listed what you did, and I just saw the amount of different things. And like when you started, and I know you said you went on your placement and stuff like that. Like, I suppose people have an idea of like a state hospital, and we all have an idea of our head of what we see through kind of media and things like that. And it's obviously not the same thing as what we would believe it to be. Was there any times when you were in there where you felt that you may have made the wrong decision, or was it always the correct thing that you did?
No, that's really fascinating that you asked that, because like the minute you started forming the question, I was just like, I think I know where this is going, and immediate memory just popped to the front of my head then as well. I was like, yes, I can remember a time when I was like, what on earth have I done?
Yeah.
It was my very, very first day of placement in first year, and I was in Bridget's, and I had been allocated to the long stay geriatric ward. And I don't know if you know kind of the grounds of Bridget's, but
Mm.
I mean, it's terrifying. It's like, it's awful. I don't know why they haven't tried to do something to try and make it a little bit more appealing. But anyway, big grey buildings, real joyful looking. And where I got dropped off, like, so I was only, what, 18? So I was getting a lift in and out to my place. And so where I got dropped off, I had to walk down this really long avenue. And like, there's like dead trees and everything on either side. And you're walking down. I was like, what have I done? What have I done? What have I done? I was like, I'm walking into an institution. I was like, what have I done? Walking in, and then it was on the second floor, so I had to go up the stairs, and it was a locked ward, so I had to like stand there. And I remember standing on the other side of the door with my hand held up as if I was going to knock, and I was just stood there for ages. I was like, can't do this. I was like, can't. It's like, what have I done? This is crazy. What am I doing? Because I could hear what was going on the other side of the
Mm.
door. I was like, oh God. And then of course the threat and drive system going on, it just something happened, and I just whacked on the door then. So somebody came and let me in. I was like,
Yeah,
don't answer, please don't answer.
first
So
first day, yeah.
yeah, it was really scary. And then like, but like, do you know what, once you got in there and you got like chatting to people, and then I suppose it's the first day nerves of anything really too as well. But I don't know, I suppose like, I think with any job there's always been moments where I'm like, what's the point, like what am I doing? And
Mm.
unfortunately, because of like some of the system setups, you'd actually, like, you could be working there a few months and you would have seen the same person come through the door 3 or 4 times. So it's like
Yeah.
kind of that revolving door system that people might have heard of. And I think in third year, I remember talking to my preceptor, and I was just like, what's the point? I was like, you're just seeing the same people day in and day out. And I was like, it's quite disheartening.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly what he said to me, but he sort of alluded to the idea that, like, look, you'll always have those people who are going to just constantly need support. And he was like, it's not that it's a bad thing. He goes, that actually here might be quite familiar for them, and they get a lot of comfort
Mm.
coming back, knowing that we're here and knowing that nothing really changes here, that, staff might be the biggest change, but even at that, there's not too much of it. And he said, it's for those people that are coming in all the time. He goes, yeah, you look after them, you mind them. He goes, but every now and then you get somebody who's new and will come in and will be really scared. And he was like, and those are the people that you really need to look after. And
Yeah.
he goes, so you kind of have to balance that element of burnout in one way, because you can kind of, you're seeing all people, same people the whole time, but to not let that get to you too much, because there'll be a day when somebody will come in and they'll need you 100% to be
Mm.
present for them then as well. So it's kind of, I suppose in a way he was trying to maybe get through to me that it's all balance and act, and to try and mind your emotions through it all as well. But you know
Yeah.
what, I don't think that's just in psych nurse, and I think that's across the board in any kind of career where you're working with people then as well, because it takes a lot out of you. Like every time you have an interaction with someone, you're giving them a little bit of yourself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you're doing that day in and day out, like, you have to be so careful of as to how much you give, and the amount that you give then as well, that you've not left nothing for yourself at the end of the day. So
Yeah, like in those, because 10 years is a long time to be working in I suppose in that way. And did you find that like it was a struggle not to take things home with you?
oh, absolutely, God,
Mm.
I think I'd be a robot if I wasn't taking
Yeah.
things home with me then as well. I suppose it's only with experience that I've been able to drop more stuff
Yeah.
in the workplace and walk away from it then as well. But yeah, definitely in those first few years it was really tough. And like, I don't know now, I think there is more awareness around minding student nurses. I know that, like, in Jigsaw we've done a lot of work with the INMO around self-care for student nurses, and we're trying to get that rolled out too as well, kind of nationally amongst all the colleges and universities. But it definitely wasn't something that was present in my day anyway. Now, I'm
Mm.
not saying I'm old and decrepit, but like, you know, it feels like a long time ago. And
Yeah.
the best support that you got was kind of from each other.
Yeah.
But even at that, like, talking to each other is great, but sometimes it can't move you forward. You
Mm.
end up sort of like stuck with it. You're just like, yeah, I've talked about it, but it hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
It's still there. So, like, in your preceptors would have been great, but they're really busy too as well, and they might have 4 or 5 other students that could actually be on the ward on the same day as you. So
Yeah.
it's time constraints, it's availability, all those kind of things. It can be really tough. But as I say now, kind of as time has gone on, getting a bit wiser, learning a bit more, and kind of learning about boundaries was a
Yeah.
big part of it too as well. I don't think that's something that's really spoken about in a whole pile, because I suppose the idea is that, like, you're a nurse, you are there to look after that person, and they get all of you for the 12 hours that you were in there, and that's it. And
Yeah.
kind of it took a long time for me to learn that, oh no, that's extremely unsustainable.
Yeah.
You can't do that. No. You have to look after yourself too as well. So
Exactly. Listen, I'm just going to get the ad in here real quickly, Nicola, and we'll get back. So Fusion Training Centre, Monks and Athlone, a place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre, train like a warrior. I kind of started that ad, you know when people when they start singing a song, but they've already started at a range that's a bit too high, and you know when the chorus comes, they're going to. I don't know what I did. It was really strange. I panicked actually after the first couple of lines, but let's get back
okay,
into
you
it.
nailed it.
Yeah, Tal, thank you very much. Listen, I want to talk to you about this because I did not know about this at all. So I'm going to ask you about perinatal mental health. I said it a couple of times to a couple of people during the week, and they thought I was not mispronouncing it, but thinking I was postnatal.
Yeah.
And they didn't. They didn't know what it was. Could you explain that for us, Nicola?
So perinatal mental, like, I suppose this is an area that's like I'm still learning too as well. Like, I do not claim to be an expert in it at all.
Yeah.
But for me, it was a thing that started, I suppose, during my own pregnancy. I had my first baby kind of Christmas Eve last year. So for me, it was a thing that during the journey of pregnancy, there was a lot of things coming up for me, and I suppose I was like, I don't know whether this is like the normal, and I put that in little air quotes.
Yes.
I don't know if this is the normal pregnancy hormones kind of playing up, because to me, I suppose it's funny because the more people that I talk to in my own area that have had kids, they're just like, do you know what? We're actually at a disadvantage because we know quite a lot. So, the way they say knowledge is power.
Yeah.
I think knowledge can be a disadvantage at the same time, because for me, I was very much trying to weigh up. I was like, is this normal, or is this something that's a bit more? And I was like, but if it is a bit more, then what is it? Because nobody's ever told me. And I was like, looking it up and stuff like that. And again, like that, all I was really getting was kind of the post. And I was like, but like, I'm not post, I'm in the thick of it. I was like, I don't understand what's happening. So for me, I was doing a lot of thinking, and I was like trying to figure it out. So I paired it all back, and for me, and I actually did a story and highlights and everything like that on my Instagram about this. And I was like, so you go back to your baseline. So what's normal for me? Like, if I wasn't pregnant, or even in the early stages of pregnancy, I was like, what is my normal baseline, and what's comfortable for me with regards anxiety or feeling low or things like that? What's manageable? What have I experienced before? Has it gotten this bad before? Have I come out of it okay? Trying to, I suppose, do a historic kind of assessment on myself, if that's a right way of saying it. And for me, it was very much a thing that I was like, this doesn't feel normal. I was like, it really doesn't. I was like, it feels a lot more intense. And I was like, I get that like there's hormones bouncing around and all of this. I'd like to say this is all going on in my head. This narrative is just rolling around in my head. I'm not actually saying this to anybody. It's just to myself. So I was like trying to think about it. And I was like, do you know what? I was like, I need to do something about this, because I was like, I can't keep going like this. I was like, I'm growing a human. I can't afford to be stuck in this cycle of like feeling really anxious and really down all the time. So I kind of started asking around. I was asking my sister-in-law, I was asking a few friends, stuff like that. I was like, have you ever felt like this? And the bit that just astounded was that everyone was like, oh yeah. And I was like, but it doesn't feel normal. And they were like, no, it was the same for me. No, I didn't. It felt really, really intense. And, I actually, like, some people were saying that, it started and it never stopped. It went on through the whole pregnancy. And I was like, that must be awful. Like, you've got enough going on, and then you've got all this happening too as well. So I started looking into it a bit more and kind of researching. And I was like, do you know what? I was like, what is going on here? I was like, because this is a whole thing that just does not seem to be talked about at all. So I went into my midwife And God bless her, she entertained me, because I go in and like 10 minutes would have been spent talking about the bump and the little human and everything like that.
Yeah.
And then the other hour would have been spent like talking about mental health in pregnant people, like what is going on. It's all post. There's nothing peri. There's nothing, like there didn't seem to be anything antenatal at all. So she was kind of in agreement in that. And once we got down to the nitty gritty of it, I was like, right, okay. So my understanding is that yes, there is a lot of things that happen postnatal. You hear a lot about postnatal depression and postnatal kind of anxiety and PTSD and everything like that. But for me, coming from an early intervention model, I was like, but if we like rewind, what has been going on for the last 9 months for all these pregnant people? Because, you know, a lot of the research was just that like it doesn't just boom happen, that like a lot of it can be building up over the pregnancy, but that it's not identified. And that was the big piece too as well, is that the identification of these issues is really difficult because it's marred with hormones, stress, everyday anxieties, kind of those things. And the question was, is it just heightened because you're pregnant, or is this actually something that needs to be sort of diagnosed, looked at and treated throughout the course of the pregnancy to try and reduce the incidences after pregnancy? So of course my mind was like blown. I was like, what? I was like, I need to learn more about this. I was like, this is fascinating, but also quite worrying, because I was like, there's babies born every 7 minutes. I was like, there are parents being born every 7 minutes in Ireland. I was like, like this is just, it's I was like, my brain was going crazy. I was like, there's just this whole area that's totally grey and not looked at. And I was like, and then of course, like being a mom and having just come out of it, I was like, my empathy just went through there. I was like, this is awful. I was like, if I felt this and my few close friends and family felt this, I was like, the nation has to be feeling it. And when I started up the Instagram page, I was like, it's not just the nation, it's the world. Because I got talking to people who are in Canada, who are in America, who are in England. And it was like, it was the same thing across the board. It was like, moms need to be looked after, or pregnant people need to be looked after from the moment of conception through to the very end, and for at least a year afterward, if not more, too, as well. So kind of that whole perinatal thing, I was just like, this is crazy.
It's really it's amazing that I'm 38 now and I never heard the term before. I never heard it until I saw your Instagram page, which is mindmama_IRL for anybody who wants to go and look at it. So when I was going through it, then there's so much to it, because you talk about the challenges of the trimesters, each trimester, and like you're saying about anxiety and none of it is spoken about. It's always spoken about the body changing. Like, it's never about the mind changing. And like it's easy for me to say now because I know what it is. Like, oh, well, why isn't anybody thinking about the mother's, mental health? But it's clearly something that hasn't been on the table at any point. It's always, like you said, it's about post. And we had, Grace, we had Grace on who did an amazing podcast about what happened after the pregnancy. But I suppose maybe something was going on while she was pregnant, and like you say, maybe it's for all mothers. There's things going on. So what are the challenges then for mothers then, like mental health wise, through each trimester?
So I suppose, I think there's challenges even before this. I suppose, again, coming from like the early intervention model, like I always look at like time spans. But even for parents who are trying to get pregnant, I know you had Cormac on before as well, like with IVF or fostering or anything like that's happening. It's about like kind of looking after not only the young person or the baby or toddler, anything like that, but it's looking after the parent. Because if you can look after and support the parent, they then can feel empowered to look after and mind that child to the best of their abilities. And look, at the end of the day, that's all we're all trying to do, is our best. But you know what? We all struggle and we all find it really difficult at times. So I suppose for me, when I was looking at the different trimesters, I was going back and like from the first trimester, from like the first third month, for me, what I found really difficult was my energy levels dropping so rapidly, and I had no control over this. So like I'd be getting ready to go to work, and like physically to look at me, nothing had changed. So like nobody would know I was pregnant or anything like that. I just looked as I normally do, but inside I was exhausted. I was so tired all the time. It really, really annoyed me. So of course I had all this frustration building up because the critic in me would be saying like, well, you should, like, you're fine, just get on with it, like you should be able to do this, you don't even have a bump yet, so you should be able to get on with it, like nothing is changing.
Yeah.
But the more you break it down, you're just like, oh wait, actually you're growing a tiny human. So it's like all your energy then gets like focused to this one part of your body. It's like sucking the energy from every part of you to this one specific place in your body. And like everything just got affected then. So like going to work, driving to work was just exhausting. Like I'd have an hour commute to work anyway. So like even that became really difficult. I'd have to take like a little 5-minute power nap before I'd go out the door to get in the car, because obviously you don't want to be driving tired. It's very dangerous. So for me, that was what kind of really hit me in the first trimester, was like the tiredness levels. And the way that affected my mental health was that I was getting really frustrated because I couldn't do what I normally wanted to do. So already I was kind of like, was this the best idea? So, and like that's early on in the game that I was thinking this. So I was like, maybe not. But kind of coming out from that, and like you'd read all the books and they'd be talking about the physical change and stuff like that, and that how tiredness would be a thing. But I think the piece that was missing for me was that, like, yeah, you can feel tired, but that can lead to feelings of frustration, of anger, of like just getting a bit upset at times too as well, because like, you couldn't, like, I felt like I couldn't exercise the way I would normally do. I couldn't really function the way I normally do. I'd come home, I'd be zonked, whereas like you come home and you do all your jobs. So that for me was the piece of the mental health aspect from like the first trimester. And the second one then, like my tiredness kind of went away a little bit, but then of course it was all like the physical things of feeling sick all the time. And like I used to joke, and they'd say it in the films too as well, like, oh, morning sickness, but like how it lasts all day. So of course then my appetite was affected, and then of course I was getting hangry, and then of course I was like, no, I don't want to eat, and getting really annoyed because I needed food to get energy to do the jobs that I needed to do. Everything was just getting affected, and I was like, this is absolute shite, excuse my language, but I was like, this is just, I was like, do you know what, it's hard enough being pregnant, why does it have to be made even harder? So kind of that was sort of the second trimester. And of course, like then like the body changes start, the little bump starts coming, clothes stop fitting, then you're going to have to go and buy a new wardrobe. I was like, for fuck's sake, I was getting really annoyed. And then of course you go and you're trying to find some nice clothes to wear when you're pregnant. Do they exist? No, they don't exist. So I was like, right. And then of course like the three flights of stairs in work, and go up and down, up and down. I was like, oh, here. I was like, this is good luck. So then that was kind of the second trimester. Things were starting to settle, I suppose, physically. I was getting into a rhythm of it and getting used to sort of having this lower energy and stuff. And then the kind of the final trimester for me, what really started to hit home for me was how everything was changing, not only in my body, but in my environment. People started to look at me differently. People were acting differently toward me. I couldn't enjoy the usual things. Like I did another bit on my page as well about like the social side of things. Like I had 2 weddings to go to, and I was just like, well, this is rubbish. I was like, this is absolutely rubbish. Like sitting there, and like these were 2 Irish weddings, so they were 2-day affairs. And now thankfully for one of them, it was quite close to my due date, so we just stayed the one night and then left the next day. I was like, I'm not hanging around for another second day session. I was like, good luck. So but the other one, then you're sitting there and you're like, for me it was that I just felt on the outside of everything. And that group of friends that we would have been at for the first wedding, like they've all kind of recently gotten married, and they're just sort of starting on that journey, whereas myself and my husband, we were kind of in the next step, I suppose, in the traditional, these are all in inverted little commas, in the traditional timeline too as well. So like I would be the first person in that group to be pregnant, and everyone was really nice, like don't get me wrong, like nobody was mean to me or anything like that, but it was just those things that you would normally connect with people about were then gone, or they were changed, and you in turn were treated differently, not in a malicious sense, but it was very much the sense that, like, well, if they're not talking to me about being pregnant, they can't talk to me about anything. And for me, I was like, I haven't changed. I was like, I'm still the same person, I just have an addition in the belly. It's like, that's all. But I don't know, for me that was a really, really tough part of the pregnancy. I mean, a word that kept coming back to me was just lonely. I just felt so lonely
Mm.
because my friends that I would have, again, either they felt like they had to talk to me about being pregnant, or that, they'd have to comment on it or acknowledge it in some
Yeah.
way. Whereas
Yeah.
I was very much the kind of person, I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm like, I'm pregnant 24/7.
Yeah.
Talk about something else.
So, yeah. Yeah. I.
Then it was the thing that, like, but if they don't talk about it, are they being rude?
Mm. Yeah.
So
That's.
I was
Yeah.
kind of caught in that limbo. There was no happy medium in the
Yeah.
middle of it.
Do you know what I find, fascinating? I suppose obviously a man couldn't understand it, but the idea that you said there, no, but I mean, I mean the idea that you said in the first trimester when all of your energy and thoughts are going into the little baby in you, and you know it sounds tiring in just the words, I think it's something that I've never thought about in that sense. Obviously, I understand that someone who's pregnant is obviously thinking about their child all the time, but just all the thoughts and energy going into it, just like I can understand why exhaustion would be a factor, and
Mm.
like with something like anxiety, then does that build as the well, I suppose it's different for everyone. Would that build as the pregnancy goes on?
I would say it's very individually
Yeah.
based too as well. Because, like, you have people who are just naturally just more anxious.
Mm.
That's just their natural state, and they might actually handle the anxiety of pregnancy really well
Yeah.
because that's normal for them. That's their baseline, shall we say. But for me, I suppose kind of my anxiety would be, triggered by certain things. And, like, on the whole, I wouldn't say I'm a very anxious person, but I would definitely say that, like, when I am anxious, am I anxious? Like,
Yeah.
it goes right through the roof. But um, I suppose for me, throughout the pregnancy, the anxiety would be focused more around, like, if I wasn't getting enough of something, I would be very anxious that that would then compromising my pregnancy.
Mm.
So if I wasn't getting enough sleep, if I wasn't getting that little bit of exercise that I'd need, if I wasn't eating right, if I wasn't drinking enough, if I wasn't resting, if I wasn't doing
Mhm.
anything. So it was kind of, I suppose at times it felt a bit like a vicious cycle in that, you know, I'd feel sick in the morning, so I wouldn't eat breakfast.
Yeah.
Then I'd get to work and I'd be knackered. And then it'd be like, right, well, you need to eat something to get a bit of energy. But I don't want to because I feel
Mm.
sick. But you have to because the baby needs it.
Yeah.
But the baby would be fine, but the baby needs it. And you're like, well, I can't do that because now I have a session. So I have to go
Yeah.
in and sit for an hour and kind of help and support somebody else. So then you come out of that session and then, like, the anxiety is kind of building. Well, now it's been 5 hours since you've eaten
Mm.
something. You really need to eat something. And then, of course, you're starting to feel more sick because you haven't eaten something. You
Yeah.
see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so like, for me, that's sort of how it built
Yeah.
over the day. And then, of course, now when I'd get a space in the day, I'd be able to talk myself off the ledge and just be like, will you just calm down?
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, the baby will take what it needs.
Yeah.
It'll take it whether you want to or not. Whatever stores you have, it will tap into them. The baby will be fine unless
Yeah.
you are off ramming yourself into something. All in all, the baby will be fine.
Yeah.
They're very resilient. You're trying to chat yourself through this. But then, of course, because the baby is fine, you start to get annoyed with yourself for getting so hemped up about it
Mm.
at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's very, my God, I'm getting exhausted even thinking about
Yeah.
it.
Well, look, I mean, there's so much. It's crazy the amount of stuff it is. But why then did you decide to set up the page down on Instagram?
So for me, it was kind of afterward. I I was thinking about it all during the pregnancy. I was like, God, wouldn't it be great if there was a service that was just specifically for, like, the mental health of pregnant people?
Mm.
And thankfully, actually, the HSE have set this up now. So I don't want to sound like I'm slating everything all the time, but there is actually a service being developed and rolled across the HSE now. It's for
Mm.
perinatal mental health too, as well. So it's just in case anybody's listening, it is there and it is available,
Mm.
and referrals through GP, public health nurse, and midwife. So afterward, I kind of started thinking about it, and I was like, God, it was really hard. And I would have, like, I love journaling. So, like throughout the pregnancy, when I was finding it really tough, I'd sit down, I'd kind of write everything out just to try and help myself out. And when I was reading back over it, I was like, God, it was really, really hard. And it was really lonely and quite scary kind of time. And it came back to that thing of, like, do you know what? I can't be the only person who felt this or feels this. So I was like, right. So then, of course, I had these big grand plans. Right, I'm going to like develop this whole service now and all this kind of crack, in my postnatal high. So once that all calmed down and the reality set in of like, no, you have a tiny child to look after. I was like, actually, the easiest way I can probably do it is through Instagram. It's a public forum, it's a platform, all this sort of thing. So I actually got in touch with a girl that I did my master's with, and because she had set up her own page, and I asked her, like, how easy is it? Is it hard? I was like, what do you think? And she linked me in with the content kind of creating website Canva. So I went in, I had a look, and I was like, I think I might be able to do this. But then, of course, the nerves set in of like, oh God, what if I only get like 2 followers or something like that, But I thought to myself, like, obviously my husband talked me around to as well. He was like, but sure, look, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I was like, yeah, do you know what? Actually, that's true. If it doesn't work, just take it down. Be fine. But people have been asking me since I developed it, oh, how's it been going and that? I was like, it's going good. It's going good. I've had a couple of people message me directly and ask me questions and, getting like nice interaction and throughout it. And what I came back to was like, you know what? I was like, if I help one person out there, that's enough for me. I was like, if just to have one person read it and be like, wow, yeah, it's normal. What I'm feeling is normal. Somebody else out there has felt it too as well. So I suppose it's just trying to normalize the conversation and actually get mums talking and get like pregnant people talking to each other and normalizing that, like, it's shit. Pregnancy is so hard. It's not only hard physically but mentally, because your head goes to so many different spaces, some of them helpful and some of them really unhelpful. And it's getting those conversations going and out there, so that like if there is a pregnant person out there, that they're kind of like, oh yeah, but I know this is okay because people have been talking about it. Or equally to know that, you know what, I know what's okay and I know what's not okay. To sort of normalize it in the sense that they might help seek a bit quicker. And I suppose I'm coming back to that idea that you want to try and reduce the incidences after birth, because people have been supported throughout then as well.
Yeah. I think that idea is I've said it a few times. I've had people coming on who said it, the reason they came on was if it would help one person. And I think that's a great, and it's great. And the other idea of sometimes people just want to hear that what their experiencing is normal, and it's not like something completely that they're going to add more and more pressure on their mental state, because of it. So what is Jigsaw then?
So Jigsaw, here's the spiel now. So Jigsaw is it's a free service for young people aged 12 to 25. So it's a brief early intervention prevention model, I should say, that really what it's about is kind of mild to moderate mental health difficulties. So stuff that young people might be struggling with, but that is not necessarily kind of in the moderate to high threshold. That it's the everyday stuff that Jigsaw's there to kind of go in, chat about it, try and get some coping tools, or even just a space just to talk about the problem and soundboard it off somebody too as well, so that you can get the tools and advice or support that you need to kind of help you in the long run, that it's a more sustainable way. And I mean, what's funny is that, like, I've worked in my place for 5 years now, and I've had young people come back, but over time. So they might have come in 6th class being really worried about coming into 1st year and the changes that brings and everything like that. And then I might see them again in 3rd year. And, it's about like the exam stress and everything like that. But, they'll hark back to the first time they were in. They were like, yeah, that really helped me then, but I'm kind of finding that those tools aren't helping me now. So for me, that's really nice to hear that, like, that, whatever they were using, they used it for over those years, but because they've gotten older and they need more mature, developed coping strategies, because the ones that they used when they were younger don't quite fit the mark anymore. So it's kind of 1 to 8 sessions is what young people get offered. And I mean, some people use the 8, some people just come in for 1, 2. It's all very much individually based, but it's very much whatever the young person brings to the table, that's what you work on. There's no diagnosis. Okay. It's not a medical model. It's not any kind of thing like that then as well. So it's kind of a free, open, non-judgmental space for young people to come in.
I mean, I spoke to you just before we started recording, and on the amount of times on this, podcast that it's come up that either myself or somebody who's come on has talked about, education in the younger people. And like I said to you, I don't know what's going on in schools. I know they're bringing, I don't know, actually, do you know what they're doing in schools in regards to mental health?
Oh, loads,
Are they?
absolutely loads. So like a lot of the schools, so I suppose I can only kind of speak for the ones that are in the locality of where
Yeah.
I work. But I mean, there will be mental health days, mental health awareness days. There's a lot of campaigns that will go on in the school. There's a lot of anti-bullying campaigns rolled out too as well. There will be the LGBTIQ kind of days, and then the anti-bullying of LGBTQI students as
Yeah.
well. There's just, they really have now, I suppose where I am, they've really put a push on over the last few years. And to be honest with you, I don't know if it's because there's a Jigsaw in the locality that
Yeah.
it's kind of something that's more on the radar for a lot of the schools. But I would say nationally there's quite a lot of work being done too as well, just to bring awareness around mental health, and that it's not something to be swept under the table. There's nothing wrong with it. Everybody has mental health,
Yeah.
absolutely everybody.
Yeah.
It's not an odd thing or anything like that. It's not a rarity. So I think it's about, as you say, sort of educating, empowering young people to take control of their own mental health and
Yeah.
decide what they want to have happen to it, and
Yeah.
let them have a say in their own mental health and what they want support in too as
Yeah.
well.
I was trying to think about when I read obviously that you worked in Jigsaw, and I looked up Jigsaw then. So I was trying to think back about when I was in school, or when I first became aware of mental health myself. And I think it was actually when the doctor said, I think you might have some mild form of depression. And this was when I was about 24. It's around,
Mm.
roughly around that. And then I thought, like, maybe the only time that I had heard about mental health was about like rock stars, or somebody like actors, celebrities, whatever you want to call, for want of a better word. And like, I always thought, well, like, I can't have it because sure, I'm only living in Athlone or Swords, wherever I was living at the time, and like, nobody knows who I am or anything. I always associated it with somebody famous or whatever, somebody with out of reach. And I
Mm.
suppose it's going back to what you say about normalizing things like that, normalizing things like, everybody has mental health, and everybody, or some people will have depression, some people have anxiety, and some people won't need it. But I can't imagine for a 15-year-old though how important something like Jigsaw is. The idea of just going in and talking is it's awkward for a teenager. Like, there's no getting around that. But I think if they form a bond with one person,
Mm.
like whether it's sitting down with yourself or whoever it is to talk to, and they form some sort of a bond, it does break down all those barriers, the barriers that they will have erected against their parents. You know, and I can't, I can't speak highly enough of something like that. And I think, do you think actually that as a whole, like, of all your experience over the years, like, are we good at reaching out, do you think?
You mean like help seeking?
Yeah.
I think we're getting better.
Okay.
Um, like I suppose even generationally, if you kind of look at your parents and then look at you, and then like not you specifically, but
No.
like, and then look at the young people. Like when I was a teenager, I would not have spoken about
Mm.
like what was going on in my head.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. No way would I have said it to anybody. But I think young people these days, they're a lot more educated than I was at their age in all realms. I think
Yeah.
not just mental health, but I think like they're just they're just amazing. They're so well informed. They educate me
Yeah.
every day as to what's going on too as well. And I think the schools have a lot to do with that, but I also think they themselves, like they're hungry for information. They want information, but it's what kind of information they're
Yeah.
getting is really important. So like when they kind of come into Jigsaw, so I suppose we go out to schools an awful lot. So we do talks in schools, and it's kind of a general chat about mental health, really just kind of highlighting that it is a normal thing, everybody has it, kind of here's when it's not so good, here's when it is good, and here's when it's
Mm.
really bad. So it's kind of just showing the different signs and symptoms, I suppose, of each scenario, so that they know where to put themselves and
Yeah.
know that, right, okay, well, I'm actually here, so maybe I do need to go and chat to somebody. So it's when they come in, you're providing that space for them. And like, I just have to laugh a lot of the time. If I had €1 for every time it said, "Oh, but you're the expert," I'm like, "Oh, no, 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 no,
Yeah,
no." And like, that is literally how I say it. I was like, "No,
yeah,
I'm not the expert. You are." I'm just like, "You tell me
mm,
what you want to get from here, and I will support you in trying to do that."
absolutely, yeah, yeah,
And it's like 99% of the time, like, the young people have the answers themselves. They just need a space to kind of explore the problem
mm,
and figure it out for themselves, because they can, and they do it all the time. They figure out the problem. It's there all the time. So it's kind of just providing that space and
mm,
support. And like, I suppose, again, I can only speak from my own hub, but like, as for the 5 years that I've gone there, our referrals have only gone up
mm,
over the years. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't mean that in that, like, the mental health of our area is terrible. It's
mm,
actually, help seeking has gone up. So that's actually, for me, a really positive thing, because, as I say, we're mild to moderate.
yeah,
So it's not like people are coming in crisis.
yeah,
It's actually people coming in who are help seeking, who are looking for that early intervention piece, to talk about problems that are beginning to bother them, and they kind of, it's not that they can't handle it, they just need a little bit of a soundboard to figure it out.
mm,
So I think that those numbers are really promising in regards to help seeking, because we're not a crisis service, but in the other sense, it's actually showing that people are talking about mental health. It is becoming normalized, and going and talking about your problems and getting a bit of help is perfectly fine.
absolutely, yeah,
And there's somebody there to do it. There's somewhere you can go and do that. And it's
yeah,
very accessible. So to me, the increase in referrals is not a sign of mental distress. It's actually a positive sign of help seeking,
yeah.
if that makes sense.
No, absolutely, and I think the sad kind of state that maybe people our age have found themselves in. They've come to the end of their tether, and they're in such a bad way that they're ending up going into see a doctor or a psychiatrist, whoever it is. It kind of they're at their worst state, and
Mm.
the good. I suppose the thing about Jigsaw and other organisations that do the early intervention model, they have some sort of an education in it, some sort of a background where they can kind of go, well, I remember when I was 18 or whatever age they were, and they say, I remember when Nicola told me this thing, and it pops up in their head, and they don't go all the way until they're at their worst state. That's kind of my best way of describing it, I suppose. But where I was, I can say that I got to the very, very end, and it was like a scary kind of thing. And I'd like to think that if I did have that little background where I had a space to talk when I was a kid, or a teenager, I should say, I think it's, and actually, where can they find Jigsaw, actually, if anybody's?
So the Jigsaw is in 14 counties,
Oh,
15. If you just go on jigsaw.ie, and there's actually a map of Ireland, and you can just click on it to see where your closest hub is
okay,
to you then as well. But actually, equally, because of these unprecedented times that we are currently living in,
yeah,
if you go on Jigsaw online, there's loads of resources online, and there's actually webinars, and there's group chats that people can enter into too as well, that are held
okay,
weekly. And they'll pick a specific topic to talk about in the group chats then as well. And it's very open, it's very accessible, and there's an 1800 number there too as well. If
oh,
people
great,
don't have a hub in their locality, they can still access and see where they can get support. If it
that's great.
isn't online, they'll get signposted then.
And what have you been doing then, like with your from home?
How do you mean?
Do you what have you if you do you have to do Zoom stuff? Do you you're
Yeah,
working from
yeah.
home,
So
like?
we're a Teams gang. So we are
Okay,
Microsoft Teams. So yeah, so I do sessions over video, over phone, and then I work in the hub 2 days a week,
okay,
doing face to face, but obviously with all the maintaining of social distancing and stuff. We're actually quite lucky in that the rooms we have are big enough that you
okay,
can do that space then as
yeah,
well, for people who might, well, I suppose for me, because I'm just returning to work, I would see new people, and it's kind of just nice for that first initial contact that you do it face to face where possible, because I
yeah,
suppose you're kind of putting a face to a name, and you kind of
yeah,
you build up a bit of rapport there as
yeah,
well. It can be done over phone and video. I suppose personally, it's the type of work that we do, so it's where I'm kind of most comfortable as well.
yeah. That's fair enough. So I looked at a little post that you put up, and it actually just links into what you said there. So you have been your son was born on Christmas Eve last year.
Mm-hmm.
What's your son's name?
Rian.
Rian. Okay, so he was born on Christmas Eve last year. You put up a post about letting go, right? And the kind of difficulties, and you were giving obviously some tips. What that space between where you talk about, obviously you were on maternity leave, and now you've come back to work. Like, was there a space there where you had to practice that kind of art of letting go?
I believe I'm still practicing.
Okay.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. I 100% underestimated how difficult it was going to be going back to work. I have a newfound respect for every parent going back to work. It's awful. It's really, really, really difficult. And I suppose I suppose I'm lucky in a way because I get to work from home a couple of days a week. Now, to be fair, the type of work I do, I actually can't have Rian in the house anyway, but like he still goes and gets minded, but he's quite close by, so he's not too far away. But like that, like the night before going back to work, I'd say I cried about 5 times during the day, and then I think I cried myself to sleep that night. And like the more I thought about it though, and I suppose I was trying to comfort myself in a way, because the big party, like the critic in you would be like, you just have to go back. Like everyone else has done it. You just have to do it. You're not allowed to cry about it. You just have to get on with it. But then I suppose the more compassionate side of me was like, but if you think about it, like any parent who's going back to work, they have gone from being with the child 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to being cut down to, I'd say I have 4 hours, maybe 5. So like that's a massive reduction. Now I understand that they're asleep for fair portions of it and everything like that, but to me I was like, it was such a shock to the system. And I was very lucky in that we were in a position where I could take the unpaid leave, so I actually had the extra bit of time too as well. So he was 10 months when I went back to work. So I was thinking to myself, like, those poor people who have to go back after 6 months. Like, oh, it's awful. Oh, it's like leaving your arm behind you. It's absolutely, it's horrific. So that whole piece of letting go, it wasn't so much even just letting go of the time, it was letting go of like the care. Okay, now he's got to go to someone else to be looked after, because like you definitely can't afford to just stop working. That's not an option. So
it's given over. I think I talk about my anxieties an awful lot, and a lot of it is to do with control, and a lot of it is to do with my idea that if I fall out of my very strict schedules, that everything's going to completely fall apart. And the doctor has said to me so many times, and the counselors and all the people I've talked to have said, routines are a good thing for your mental health. Obviously, get to sleep and all that, but not as strict as mine are. And I was looking at that the post you did about letting go, and I'm kind of like, I will, and I'm working on it, but it is very, very difficult, and it doesn't matter what it is though, like what you're talking about, whether it's anxieties, schedules, and obviously you're talking about you go back into work and things like that. It's very difficult, and I don't like to think I'm a control freak or anything like that, but it's just, I think it's going to manage my anxieties when it's probably not, and I'm just finding it very hard to let go of those things.
It's just fascinating, like hearing you talk about like how you manage yours. Like I think the piece about anxiety, and it's not just for you, it's across the board. Like anxiety, the core of it is control, because if we feel out of control, our threat system is immediately activated, and that's where our anxiety comes from. So like we like to be in control. Like even if you find the most laid back person in the world, they'll say, oh no, it doesn't bother me, that'll be fine. That's their version of control. Their version of control is in the unexpected. They're like, and so if you were to put them into a really restricted routine, they'd be like, I don't like this, it's too controlled. So everyone has their different versions of it. And I think there's nothing wrong with having our own coping strategies. There's nothing wrong with liking things in a particular way, but it's having that wiggle room. And I would I'd link that to myself as much as I would in session too as well, is that we're not saying to just fucking drop everything and let's get loose, everything like that. No, because that's too much to ask of ourselves. It's more about where is the wiggle room. So just to kind of it's literally just, even if it's just an inch to the left and an inch to the right, it's just a little bit of wiggle room then as well, because we're creatures of habit. We like black and white, and I say this a lot, is that we like it to be this or that. We don't like things in the middle. We don't like the grey area, because that's what we can't control.
Yeah.
And that's where an awful lot of our unknown lies as well. Whereas, like, if I know I have a routine, this is how it plays out, and if I don't have a routine, I need to do this to get the routine, to find something to do. We don't like staying in the grey for very long, and I think that's where we get caught, when we start overthinking and we get stuck in like all the stuff that we don't have control over. That's where the lines get blurred between the black and the white, and that's where we lie in the uncontrolled, and that's where our anxiety really heightens, and we get, as I say, our threat system gets activated, and then of course, like, it's just a mess after that then if you can't calm yourself down.
It's funny though, but you know that you'll have experienced this, and I think most people will, when you are in that routine or something, and you do dip your toe in the water as such to kind of break out of it, and at that moment it does feel quite scary, and you know you are even more anxious. But there is that thing of it's quite nice when you do it, like, do you know, for the most part, maybe not all the time, but I just find that sometimes it is quite nice when you do it, and if you can get out of it, it's definitely worth it. So I asked this question to everybody, and it's a funny one, because most people are kind of going, what are you talking about? But what do you like to do in your spare time? Because most people don't have it.
Well, I think I might fall into that category.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's like, no, I do have time and stuff like that. What do? I love to read. I absolutely love reading. When I get a chance and I get a really good book. I have yet to find a really good book at the moment now. I can't remember the last time I read one that I wanted to devour.
Yeah.
But oh no, do you know what it was? It was what is it? Ophelia something is completely fine.
Oh,
Ophelia
I know.
Alphonse is completely fine.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but I know the book. Yeah.
Oh, there, get on that.
Great.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Oh, I just devoured it. I was like, getting to the evening time, I was like, can I go to bed yet? Because I can read. So, you know, and I think I'm reading Louis Theroux at the minute.
His autobiography, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah, I read that there recently, actually. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, I like him. But
oh no, I like him. Yeah, no,
yeah.
He's very good. But like, the book, I kind of feel like I'm just reading the documentaries that I've already watched.
There is a bit of, and I suppose maybe aiming that at the people who hadn't seen them, you know. But I was listening to his podcast. He's a podcast out at the moment, and he's just interviewing celebrities one-on-one over Zoom, and it's actually really fascinating. He had a few brilliant ones in the last series. He's got a new one out now, but it's worth checking out, actually. I was actually going to add that, you know, the next question was, what is currently on your nightstand? But that's obviously what's it.
Oh yeah, well, I've got Louis Theroux, and I've got the bubblegum for the brain then. So the loveliest chocolate shop in Paris.
Yeah, okay, I don't know that one.
I read that when I don't want to concentrate.
Right.
And then I have Louis Theroux when I want to concentrate.
Have you read any, oh God, what's her name? Louise O'Neill?
No, I've not read any of her stuff now.
Yeah,
It's a bit heavy.
Yeah.
See, I have to be careful. I have to be very careful as to what I read.
Yeah.
Because it depends on how work is going.
Okay.
So that's why I have the loveliest chocolate shop. So if I've had really, really, really bad day, I read that. So I don't have to think. And then then there's other times when I'll read like really heavy stuff as if I'm working. So I'm just like, I have to be very careful.
Do you know what I do actually, Nicola? I do the thing where if I'm in a really good form and I'm like in a good place, I go straight to the heavy stuff because I can handle it, you know?
Yeah.
But then when I'm like, if I'm down or something, I will tend to try and just pick myself up with just lighter stuff. I think that's common sense though, isn't it?
I think, like, why would you do that? That's just like banging your head off wall. Like, I feel really bad, so I'll just go make myself feel worse.
Yeah, I think
that doesn't make sense.
I just read a book about Charles Manson, and now I'm reading Louise O'Neill's.
As you do.
Yeah, as you do, yeah. I've read a couple of books on him because I'm kind of interested about I think I'm more interested in the idea of how he managed to manipulate so many people into doing what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But this one was it was more conspiratorial. I think it was more to do with like the CIA and how they could have been involved and stuff. It was interesting, but you didn't take it too seriously. But I'm reading Louise O'Neill at the moment, and I bought 3 of her books, and I'm just trying to get through them. But they are heavy. Like Asking for It was one of them that was a lot, but completely a necessary book, for any time. But the one I'm going to start now, I have it's something to do with silence. I put it up on the Instagram anyway. But yeah, it doesn't sound like it's very. It doesn't sound like it's very jolly either. I'll be honest. But
No, Jesus, you're saying that like you're full of fucking winter cheer or
I
something.
know,
And
yeah,
then you're reading that stuff.
can't wait to start that one. But so what's your favorite book then? Do you have one?
Oh, number one always is The Book Thief.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love The Book Thief is always my number one. I've read it about 3 or 4 times now.
Oh,
And then after that, it'll be Joseph Connolly's The Book of Lost Things.
haven't read that.
And then, yeah, it's really, it's very, it's sort of like grim fairy tale fantasy sort of.
Okay.
It's a little bit sinister, but
Yeah.
you kind of wouldn't realize it when you're reading it. It's only afterwards, and your brain starts going back to it. You're like, that was a bit weird.
Yeah.
But no, I love that. I love kind of I love Terry Pratchett books as well. Yeah, I suppose it kind of depends on
Yeah.
my mood, and that Ophelia Oliphant is like, it's just warms the cockles of your heart.
I'm going to check that one out. And I do. What's brilliant about people who are really into reading, and you speak to them, they tend to cover quite a wide range of different genres, and like even you're doing the Louis Theroux and the non-fiction. I read a lot of non-fiction, and I try to mix it in with a bit of fiction. And I think that's the best way to read. I wouldn't like to think I'd be stuck in a particular genre and just go right through it, and that'd be it then. Like, and just wait until the next book by George R.R. Martin comes out, whatever it is. Like, I'm not picking on him, by the way. That's just he popped into my head.
Waiting.
Yeah, you will be waiting. I'm not. I have never read any of his books, so it doesn't matter to me. Listen, one more question before we go. Are you a Christmas person?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I love Christmas. It's weird though, as the years have gone on, I find it kind of harder to get into it, but I don't know if that's because I'm an adult.
Yeah.
And you're kind of working up until that point then as well. But I suppose, yeah, last Christmas I was waddling around the place, so I was like just wanting to get it done. But no, I'm very much, I love Christmas.
That's deadly. But I saw some of your photos. That's why I asked. I was thinking you were down in Galway with Damien, and I just saw some of the pictures and the lights, and I haven't even seen the Athlone lights because I don't go into town at night, or any time really. But I just saw some of the lights, and it looked it's something quite romantic about that. And I think Galway, I spent time in Dublin. I went to school there and stuff, but there's something quite nice about Galway I've always liked,
Oh, sure. Now, as Tamo turned around to me after I put that up on Instagram, he was like, "What's this first love shite?" I was like, "Oh, he's my first love. I'm sorry."
Oh, I thought you meant him. I thought you meant he was your first love.
Oh no, Galway.
Okay. Sorry, Damien.
Galway was there long before he was.
Yeah. Oh, that is, well. I mean, that's a good cover.
We used to have a tradition every Christmas. We'd go to a Christmas market in Europe. Like, so Germany, we've been to a few in Germany. We went to Edinburgh one as well. So every Christmas we would book a trip away to go to the Christmas markets. And sure, like, I'm like a child, throw me into the middle of a Christmas market and I'll be gone. Like, you need to put rambling straps on me. I'm very bad. I'm like, ooh, nice.
They're cool though. The Galway one was really nice. I went to that once. I was just so full of anxiety that there was so many people there. I was like, I really didn't want to be there, but I just liked the idea of it. If there was no one there, it'd be class. So this is the spirit. That's the spirit. That's the Christmas cheer. So this is like, it's not Rian's. Technically, it's not his first Christmas.
No, this is the thing. And everybody's saying, "Oh, it's his first Christmas," and it's his second Christmas, and it's his first birthday. So
yeah, and it's exciting.
No, he was home on Christmas Day.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Oh, that was quick.
Oh, stop! I had the nurses badgered every time they came in. I was like, "Can I go?" I was like, "Can I go?" And they were like, "When did you have him?" I was like, "Just after midnight." And they were like, "No, you have to be here 24 hours." I was like, "Right, well, how long have I been here now?" They were like, 6. I was like, "All right, okay." So
yeah.
I was like, "Yeah," I had them badgered, and then I got home Christmas Day, kind of afternoon time.
Well, look, it's exciting, and of course, I know he doesn't know about Santa yet and all that. That's fair enough, but that's all to look forward to, though. That's good.
Yeah,
it's going to be great. Yeah. Nicola, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. We like to thank you very much for taking time out of your day. Your day off, is it?
I have parental leave on Mondays, yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm sorry for cutting into it, but no.
Dare you, Derek?
Oh yeah, he's so. I get a real abusive text message. You know what? No, but it's been great having you on. And hang on for me there for a minute, will you? Until I just want to get a photo as well, if that's all right.
Bother. Thanks for yourself.
Right, I'll get through. So thank you to John, his family, and to Megan. Thank you very much to Ger, Calvin, who's been added to the list there. My mum, my dad, my granddad. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We are on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Google Podcasts, yeah, that's it, etc. And thanks everyone for listening in. We'll be back on next Wednesday, and keep an eye out on Sundays. And whenever I do the Instagram ones, I don't really have a plan, so I'll just pop it up the day before and see what happens. So, Nicola, thank you very much.
Thanks yourself.
And thanks to everyone for listening, and take care. Bye.